And we are back with Dragonball Daima episode 13. Last week we had a week off, and then the week before that was episode 12. So here we are back with the episode 13. And as always, in every video, every review that I have, there will be spoilers. I will talk about the stuff that happens in this episode. If you do not want to be spoiled, please go watch the episode first, then make your way back over here, listen to my review, let me know if I missed anything, let me know if I forgot anything, let me know if you want to know something about the episode that maybe you didn't quite understand, that maybe I understand. But with that out of the way, that is your spoiler review. So let's get into it. So the first thing that happens in this episode is we are catching up with exactly how episode 12 left off 2 weeks ago, with Gomah now being overly stressed out that Goku and the gang have the second Dragon Ball and they're making their way to Demon World 1. Well, it was even Degasu was like, well, they're coming to Demon World 1 now, sir. Like we can, maybe we can plot around. Well, he doesn't say that, but he's like, they're coming to Demon World 1, and Gomah's like, oh yes, I know. Is the military police here? Like, do we have them all in Demon World 1? And Degasu's like, well, we pretty much all of them, yeah. And Gomah's like, okay, great, perfect. Here, I have a plan. So this is Gomah's master plan to keep Goku and them away from Demon World 1. He tells Degasu to go turn off Warpfish. Like, what? So I guess Warpfish works in a little bit ways like a mechanical concept. I thought it was his own physical, magical being, but I guess if you are the Supreme Demon King and you live up in the castle, there's a switch. Or there's a switch to turn off Warpfish. And Degasu is like, you can't be serious. Like, really turn off Warpfish? Are you even sure this is the right call? And Gomah, being Gomah, the paranoid little coward that he actually is, I mean, the shift that we've gotten from Gomah appearing in episode 1 to the Gomah we've got in episode 13, it's kind of wild when you think about it, because they set up Gomah to be like this big threat of a character, small in stature but very sneaky and conniving, and a lot more than meets the eye. But with each episode, it's more and more prevalent and evident to me that Gomah is not any type of real threat to anybody. He just happens to be in the right place at the right time and know the right kind of people. And I guess maybe he's related to Deborah in some way, because literally as Deborah died and they saw it, he immediately took over as the Demon King himself. So I either, and it never really specified his connection to Deborah or even how he was in the position to take over as Supreme Demon King. But again, we got like episode 1, soon as Deborah was gone, he's like, I'm the Demon King, and no one questioned it. So I guess he was just like the next successor anyway, and no one really questioned it. Or maybe you can take over the demon world by proclaiming yourself as Demon King when the next one passes away. I don't even know how they do this stuff, but like I said, that first episode, Gomah is like, becomes the Demon King, and every time everyone talks about it, they're like, oh, he's really powerful with his magic. But nah, he's actually some paranoid little coward that is truly afraid to lose or even be challenged, because he knows he's not going to be able to be a threat. We saw it in last week when he saw Anrisu's creations fighting Tamagami 1 and saw that they bested him. So he knows, Anrisu has characters that can stop him. He knows Goku and them can stop him. He's trying everything he does to not have to deal with them, with the wishes and now turning off Warpfish. He is doing everything he can to keep those from challenging him. And I don't know what he's going to do with Anrisu, because he knows that she has these characters and that she has a Dragon Ball. I don't know how he plans on dealing with her, but his idea to stop Goku and them from showing up is turn off the Warpfish. And that's what we see Degasu do. He goes to this little underground cavern stuff. Looks really not cool with all the, animation and the weird effects and stuff. And Degasu's not real sure that he likes this idea. Like, he doesn't feel comfortable with it. And I'm starting to see that we may get a little bit of pushback from Degasu in the coming episodes towards Gomah, because he's already showing a little bit of this. I'm not really cool with this, but he goes ahead, pulls the lever, turns off a Warpfish. So how Goku and them are going to get to Demon World 1, I don't know. They'll come up with something. I 100% know they're going to come up with something. But as of right now, Warpfish is turned off and no one can get to Demon World 1 now. So how are we going to get there? Magic. I already know that's going to happen. But speaking of Goku and them, we catch back up with them, and they end up crashing because something went wrong with their ship to start off with, and then lightning strikes it, so they crash land on this planet. And while Ponzi and Bulma start working together on it, they are searching around the area looking at stuff, and they're kind of just amazed at how big everything is. Like, you're seeing stuff from Goku's perspective, and like you have these huge thorns, these huge leaves, and it reminds me not so much of like Dragon Ball, but there's this episode in GT that Goku lands on a giant a planet with giants. I know they have really big characters in classic Dragon Ball, but like in terms of being on a planet, right? Now on the GT side of things, we didn't really get much of that, kind of like how we don't get much here. But this wacky idea of being on a planet with really giant plants and really giant everything seems to be right up Toriyama's alley anyway. So Neva is the one that points it out to the rest of the crew, and even for us. He's like, we have got to get out of here. We got to get the ship fixed. We've got to get off this planet. And they're like, why? What's the big deal? And he's like, we've crash landed on the planet of Mega. So the planet of Mega, and they're like, what do you mean the planet of Mega? They're like, there's, and he's like, this planet is filled with giant beings, giant creatures, giant everything, and not even the Supreme Demon King or the military will even come here. Like, no one wants to come to this planet because of it. And they're kind of bewildered by this because at this point they haven't really seen anything, and then they get attacked by this like little herd of hamsters, these giant hamsters. They're probably normal sized hamsters for the planet, but they're giant compared to Goku and them. And they're just like, oh my god, they start fighting the hamsters, and then out of nowhere they hear this huge crashing and crumbling and going down, and when they look over they see this giant kid. It's a kid, because they reveal that it's one of the mega kids of the planet. Not a mega adult, it's a mega kid. And they're like, he's already huge. And Neva's like, yeah, that's a mega child. And they're like, that's a child? That's not even the adult? So we don't see any adults in this episode. So I wonder if that's how big the kid is. And he didn't even look like a full grown kid. He looked like a toddler, or like, not a toddler, but like, like, I'm just gonna guess off this because we see some other ones walking around like a little bit later. Oh, fourth grade-ish. The way he acts, kind of fourth grade-ish. So you're looking at like a 8-ish, 9-ish equivalent year old giant kid. And so I can't imagine how big the actual adults are of this planet. But, well, before they get attacked by his dog, he's got this little dog creature thing that's with him, and it's a giant thing too. And before this dog thing wanders off and starts attacking our crew, we see Bulma and Ponzi talking, and they're trying to fix the ship, and poor Hibis gets dragged into this, and they're like, use him as a stool. And of course Hibis fights back with Vegeta a lot, but clearly Hibis isn't going to fight back with the princess. But so he gives in, and Bulma and Ponzi are working on it, and as they open it up, Bulma's like, oh, what is this thing? And there's this little gem rock thing, and what did she called it? I'll put it in there. I'll pull it up, and I forgot the name of it. I'll put it in there. But she pretty much said it's a pretty rare material, and because of what it is and how it's made, these things basically, that's what they use to give their machines flight and their energy to move around like stuff. And apparently it can last like 30 years. Like one little rock thing can last like, it's not even like a little rock, it's a decent size, but it can last like 30 years. Now the way she phrased it made me kind of think something, because she said at the bottom of Demon World 3, so the top of Demon World 2, and the water leaking from 3 leads into 2 and stuff like that. I don't know if that was a translation error to where like they phrased it wrong, or if, because I might have completely missed it in the other episodes, but the way she phrased it made it seem like the way the Demon World set up, you have Demon World 3 stacked on top of Demon World 2, which then would imply that Demon World 2 is stacked on top of Demon World 1. I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just how it is. Again, I don't recall any screenshots or any artwork that comes out that shows like how the Demon Realms worlds are stacked or even staged. I don't know. But again, the way she phrased it made it seem like the water of Demon World 3 and all of its stuff and the acidicness of those waters drips into Demon World 2, is which helps create these minerals, and like they're pretty hard to get to. And she's a princess, but Bulma's like, do you think we can get this? And even though she's a princess of Demon World 3, she's like, I can ask my dad, we'll just find a way to steal it. So apparently it's not a super, super common thing. Like, it's not a cheap thing you just find a store. You got to know people to find the people and stuff like that, which makes sense why the average people of Demon World 3 especially wouldn't have access to this stuff, and the other ones probably just steal planes. I mean, kind of given Demon World 3 was like this wild west area type of stuff. So, but Bulma, we might see, since Bulma was asking about it, we might see her grab one at the end of it, because she's like, when I was working on this other plane before Hibis picked us up, I couldn't get it to work, and I couldn't quite understand what I was missing, and she was missing because it needed one of those new little rocks. And so now that she knows this, she's probably gonna get one at the end of the episode, at the end of the series. Stuff. But yeah, I thought that was the most interesting part about that conversation, was the way she phrased it. And it got me thinking. I'm like, oh, so it's Demon World 3 stacked on 2, then stacked on 1, which is kind of weird when you think about it, because when you assume 1 stacked on 2, stacked on 3. But if you go back to like the earlier episodes where they show off, remember that big giant crater in the ground of Demon World 3, and it had the barrier put across it, and they said, you used to be able to travel freely from 1 to 3 up and down, right, until they closed off those craters. I guess now it does make more sense that Demon World 3 stacked on 2, stacked on 1, whatever, maybe. I don't know. That's just how I took it. I might be wrong on it. That's just how I took it, the way she phrased it, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's no lore canon breaking or anything like that, because we knew nothing about the Demon World prior to this series. I just thought it was an interesting way she phrased it, because now I'm like, oh, so it's got Demon World 3, 2, and 1, as you go down, it just progressively gets better as you go down, which, when you think of Demon World, and everyone's like hell, and even though that's not quite the same, but when people think of, hell, air quotes on that, I always think of below the earth and below the surface, so it does weirdly make sense that the best demon realm would be on the bottom layer of this little stacked universe. So whatever. But anyway, back to the giant and the dog. So that dog just starts attacking, running around, and they're like, we can't let the dog get to the ship, and they're like, we have to hide from the dog. And Neva's like, yo, if you're not working on the ship, hide, because if that thing eats us, we're totally screwed. So Bulma and Panji are still working on it on secret, and then unfortunately the dog notices them, goes after it. Vegeta and Piccolo and Goku, they're trying to stop it, keep it distracted. And for those, if you see this episode and you want to argue like, oh my god, they got beat up by a little doggy, you have to realize that Goku and them are very small. They're already kids as it is, and even though they're extremely powerful, they're on a planet where everything is vastly gigantomized, right? So that's not even a real word, giganticized. I think that's the word I'm thinking of. So yes, the proportional strength and weight to these creatures are going to be way like it's like they're ants compared to this dog, and then they're even smaller compared to the human, right? So if you want to understand, like, hey, ants are extremely strong in the insect world, but ants aren't really all that strong compared to us, right? Now, if you have a human-sized ant, then you'd have a different conversation around it. But normal ants that we see in the outside world and everyday life, they're really small. We can move them around and we can do stuff with them, and they're not much, but in reality, they're really strong creatures. Same thing here. Goku and them were really strong, but it's hard to compete with a giant creature like this. So they're fighting with the dog, and the dog smacking them around. And at one point, Goku ends up in the dog's fur, and he's like, "Am I on the dog? Like, what is going on?" And then he gets attacked by basically ticks or fleas. Either one doesn't remind him. They jumped up, and they're like, "Oh, I think these are ticks." And these little creatures, they chase him up, and Piccolo blasts him away. Goku blasts him away, and it was the funny thing was before that happened, when they were chasing it, Glorio thought he was gonna get taken out by the dog, and Vegeta just uppercuts the hell out of this dog and doesn't knock it out, but like knocks it back briefly, and then of course Vegeta's like, I got this, and then I realized that, okay, no, I can't take on the dog by myself, holy crap. And anyway, they're dealing with the dog, and the dog's about to jump on the ship, and Goku's like, I'm not gonna make it back in time to save it, and he hits him with the very beautifully animated Kamehameha, and I mean, like, it was a really pretty one, and it knocks the dog out, and they're like, oh, we did it. And then as they are finishing it and getting ready to fly off, the giant, the kid sees them, and he's standing like behind the dog. So now they're dealing with the giant, and he's poking at the ship, and he's doing all this stuff. They're trying to fly away. He's swinging at him with a stick, with his ruler, and Goku and them are trying to do what they can to get him off of him. Goku accidentally, like the giant's about to grab them as they're flying away, and Goku flies up. Obviously has to go Super Saiyan for this because, again, the proportional weight stuff here. Uses Super Saiyan to kind of push his hand back, but again, the kid just has the proportional strength difference in this, and he's pushing Goku back, and then he slams his hand into his chest to kind of try to squish Goku, and of course he doesn't. Goku falls into his clothing, and then as he tries to make his way out of the clothing, he falls into the gym bag, and he didn't go Super Saiyan against him to stop the hand, but when he fell in the gym bag, the backpack, then he goes Super Saiyan to power up and starts going at him, pulls out the power pole, slams it against the ruler, and honestly I kind of thought the ruler would snap right here just for the sake of a very comedic concept. I thought as soon as Goku hit it with the power pole that it was going to snap, because we know the power pole, again, this is a conversation that me and another one of my friends of mine were having about the power pole when they said, I don't remember which episode it was, but they were mentioning like the material used for it, and I think they even mentioned the power pole itself was made of it. Or my friend was like, yo, what if that material that Goku and that stuff, like the power pole is made of that material, that really, 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 really strong material from the demon realm and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe, we don't really know. All I know is the power pole is extremely durable and extremely strong and very magic blessed. So it would make sense, and it wouldn't really break anything because we don't know where the power pole came from. All we know is that the power pole in classic Dragon Ball used to be what tied Korin's lookout to Kami's tower, and then Roshi took the power pole and then gave the power pole to Gohan, and then Gohan gave the power pole to Goku, and then for a brief moment in time, the power pole at the end of classic Dragon Ball, or at the end of the Demon King Piccolo arc, Goku reattached the power pole to the Kami's lookout, reattached it, but then once everybody could fly and stuff, we never saw the power pole again. But then the power pole got gifted back to Roshi, and he was using it. So again, we don't know the origins of the power pole itself, so I'm like, maybe that's a pretty cool concept. I never thought of that. We don't really know, but again, I thought he was going to use the power pole to destroy it. He didn't. But anyway, they get away from the giant, and they're flying away, and they're like, oh my god, what in the hell? And they're like looking down, they're seeing all the giant kids on their way back from school, on their way to school, whatever, I don't. And they're just kind of amazed, and then Neva's like, whew, man, that was crazy. And then Vegeta's like, wait a minute, like a little bit ago you said that this planet Omega, was the second most dangerous planet. What's the worst planet here? Like, what's the most dangerous planet? And Neva goes, oh, that's the planet of Giga. And they're like, what? And he goes, yeah, if you think the people on this planet are huge, the people on Giga and the creatures on Giga are even bigger than this. So the Demon World has these two planets in Demon World 2 that are just they're just full of giants. And will we see planet Giga or the inhabitants of planet Giga? I don't know, maybe. I can see it. It's Dragon Ball. I can see it. But after Neva says this, they're like, oh my god, you gotta be kidding me. This is insane. And that, as we end off the episode, we see like this really pretty, like, I don't know what it was. It was just like these weird sparkle effects that were coming up from the planet as they're flying away, and they're just kind of amazed, and they're just like, wow, this episode. So this episode really was just a fun little goofy filler episode. I don't want to say filler. Don't take it too seriously when I say filler. It was one of those episodes that's just used to help move the story along. Right? It's not. No big hype action, nothing real story progressive happens in this episode besides that stuff with Gomah right in the beginning with the warp fish. Other than this was just a fun little episode to jump back into it. Do I wish we would have had an episode after a week off that pushed the story forward a little bit more? Yes, I really do, because the series apparently is going to end in sometime in March or the beginning of March, so they're running out of time. And apparently, so there's only going to be like 20 episodes, maybe 22 episodes of this series. they've got to start picking this up, man. Like I'm enjoying it, but overall they've got to pick it up a little bit. The use of Onrisu and Do and Ku getting the Dragon Ball from T1 really saves some time, because then, you know, Goku and them don't have to go fight T1, so we can kind of jump that. I do hope to see T1 fight with Goku and them just for the sake of it, but we get to skip over that fight a little bit because we've already got it. So that does, you know, remove part of the chunk of the story that we'll have to get through eventually, but they need to move on a little bit. They gotta push the pace a little bit, put on the gas a little bit to get through this, especially if we're gonna wrap up by episode 20 or 22 or something like that. We've got to go. That leaves, we just finished episode 13. That leaves 7 episodes, maybe 9 episodes left total, maybe 10 episodes left total. Again, sometime in March the series is supposed to end. We got to move it a little bit. While I'm enjoying the series, and I love episodes like this because they're just fun and just enjoyable and wacky, we got to move it here, guys. But I really loved this episode just in the fun that it's a fun episode. Is it anything story real crazy? No. The only chunk of the story of this episode that really has anything to do with the actual story of the series so far has just been that stuff with Gomah right in the beginning. The rest of the episode was just a fun little side adventure stuff of Goku and them crashing on a giant planet with giant creatures and getting attacked by giant hamsters and giant kids and giant dogs. That's all this episode was. It was a fun episode. It was just a relaxing episode in the terms of the story. It made me laugh. It's that reminiscent of classic Dragon Ball of like, hey, I know y'all really like this stuff, but it was just a random episode, and that's all it really was. But tell me what you think about it below in the comments below, what you thought about the episode. Well, did you like this was the episode coming back? Did you not like that this was the episode coming back after a week off? Whatever it may be, let me know in the comments below. But this has been my review for Daima episode 13. Next week we'll have Daima episode 14 labeled Taboo, and from the brief little images, Goku got beat up. He's fallen into a giant spider web. Well, it looks like a giant spider web. And I'll see you guys next week when we review Daima episode 14. So, till next time, everybody. See ya.